Thank you all for coming to meet with this this afternoon on such short notice. As I told our school board, I'm astounded by the allegations that have been made by one of our employees. The allegations in the memo are untrue mischaracterizations of very routine accounting procedures. During our school board meeting tomorrow evening, the first item on the agenda will be to go through the accusations and fully explain the truth. I've also formally requested that the state auditor and the Office of Education Accountability come into the district to conduct independent investigations and to validate our conclusions. As you know, we remain under a May 30th deadline to adopt our working budget, and we'll continue to focus our efforts on working with the school board to come to a consensus. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Did you learn about this $20 million on October 18th, 2012?
Well, that's difficult to explain because this $20 million is questioned in this entry has nothing to do with the $20 million reduction in our budget, the deficit.
Well, explain to us how it doesn't.
Okay. The journal entry that is in question in the memo is an accounting reclassification that's required to be made annually as part of Governmental Accounting Standards Board 54 statement, which we have to follow. And what happens is when we have our audit, our annual financial audit that's completed, we have to make sure that the classifications on our financial statements agree completely to the classifications on the audit. And since the accounting system that we use through the state of Kentucky does not match that system, we have to make these classifications accordingly. And so it's called a reclassification entry, and we're simply reclassifying the names and structures of the account. It's not truly changing anything on the bottom line. It's just a reclassification of account codes. So it's nothing to do with the budget reduction.
So when Rodney Jackson put correction, that really wasn't a correction, or it really is a correction?
It's a reclassification.
Reclassification.
Right. He's correcting the classification codes to agree to the audit.
Where is she coming up with this? If you say it's not true, then where's it coming from?
The $20 million?
Yeah. Or just how? I don't think the money's the issue. I think it's when it was deposited is the issue. If these are not true,
deposit with this particular. This is a journal entry. You know, that's an accounting classification. It doesn't have anything to do with the real movement of any type of funds or money. It's simply the way that money is classified on our financial statements.
So you need to be an accountant to figure this out. Probably.
Can
you explain it to our viewers and to the people, your constituents, in layman's terms?
In 2010, the governmental agency that adopts the standards by which audits are done for governmental agencies, they specify how accounts should be shown on financial statements. And so when they do that, we have to make sure that the audits that are done by outside external auditors in our accounts are aligned the same way and reported the same way. It's, in other words, it'd be like if you had some funds in an investment account and you had classified an investment as a certain type of investment, but the investment company called it another type of investment, having to reclassify it to call it what they call it, to change the structure of what they call it. And so tomorrow evening in our board meeting, because it is so hard to understand, we will start with a timeline and go through from 2010 when the system was put in place, the full flow of transactions that relate to this reclassification entry.
Did you ask? Are you telling me the budget for the last 2 years has been inflated by $20 million?
Yes, I did ask that question.
And she said yes?
Yes, and we later found out that that wasn't true.
When did you find that out?
At a subsequent meeting later, when I met with the full operations staff, our chief financial officer, our chief operations officer, and our budget director, she was in that meeting.
Is there a possibility you could ask the state to push back that May 30th deadline?
I don't see a need to do that at this point. I believe the questions related to the budget and this information are not the same thing. They are, this is clouding the issue of the budget. The budget questions that we've had have come around reductions in spending in areas such as special education and in the arts, and then for some of our staff who we're seeing reductions in their number of days worked, who have had some questions about that. And so this issue and the budget issue are really not the same issue.
Why would someone go out on a limb and accuse you of crimes, multiple crimes then?
I don't know. You'd have to ask. But I don't believe any of these things that are listed there are criminal activity. They're simply accounting entries and internal procedures and policies, that are listed there. But again, everything that's listed there has been done according to our normal standard policies and procedures.
So you don't see an irregularity in the
No.
budget?
There is no irregularity in the budget.
A woman with 16 years of experience says that numerous acts of mismanagement, fraud, waste, abuse of authority have resulted in the current state of affairs. That's in the very first paragraph that she sent to Adam Eaton.
Again, I don't believe any of that to be true.
What if it is true?
There's no indication of it from anything that she has alleged. We've reviewed all of the items in the letter, and again invited the state auditor and the Office of Education Accountability in to review the same information.
She also says that you, without board authorization, sent payments to entities that you shouldn't have, above and beyond what you were supposed to. Did you?
I didn't see that in the letter, but if you're referring to the payments that were related to funds within my budget line items, the only thing that I saw in there was there's an allegation of a budget transfer that needed to be made and be board approved in order for those funds to be expended, and those funds were being expended out of my budget line. It was simply being moved from one budget code to another code, which would not need approval.
How much is your budget?
My total budget is somewhere about, including salaries for my assistants and myself and all, somewhere about I think it's about $600,000.
Did you authorize staff to have increase in salaries that were not approved by the board?
No, I did not.
Did you use the hay allowance to inflate salaries at any?
No, I did not. These hay additives are on the approved salary schedule that the board has approved and was part of the budget package.
What about the $75,000 to Navigo?
That's what we were just referring to, the budget transfer and amendments. That was simply moving money from, in a budget line item, from one line item to another line item within my budget.
She claims to have over 1,000 pages of documents and has been following some of this stuff for a number of years, according to her lawyer. Are you going to present all the same amount to Adam Evelyn's office?
We'll present whatever is requested. We have nothing to hide, and we'll certainly, any information that is needed or anything that needs to be reviewed or audited will be made available.
As far as retribution towards her, since she still is employed by the school, what steps are you taking to make sure that you don't overstep those boundaries?
Well, I have not even spoken to Ms. Mullins. I haven't seen her. She was out all of last week. I'm not even sure if she was in the office today. But there certainly would be no retribution to her for any of these. I have to believe that there's, just misunderstanding here, or some type of, information that she's looked at that's not complete, that's brought about these allegations. But I can assure you, we've reviewed every one of them, and there, is no foundation to them. but also say that we've, within the past 2 years, have gone through a full audit by the state auditor's office, and there were no findings from the state auditor's office.
She says you learned about the deficit on October 18th, 2012. When did you say you learned about the deficit?
That was when we believed that we needed to start looking at means of making budget adjustments. The district's been overspending for a number of years. As we've explained multiple times in board meetings, many districts have to do this when we have reductions in funding from state and federal sources. And so that's what the fund balance is there for, is to offset those losses in revenue. And so the district had been spending, but what happened in those years was it was made clear that we needed to go ahead and make an adjustment because the funding resources were not coming back as quickly as we normally would expect. And the district had to take on additional expenditures for grants such as our world languages grants and our smaller learning communities grant. And so what we have to remember is still that this $20 million is a huge sum, but this is still less than 5% of our budget, and we'd seen a gap in our revenues and expenditures that needed to be closed.
When did you learn of the deficit? Was it 2012, the fall of 2012?
It was fall of 2012.
Do you think you did anything to exacerbate that?
No, we didn't do anything to exacerbate it. As a matter of fact, we made adjustments and corrections to minimize it. Revenue that was stated that was made available for the 2012-13 had been overstated in the estimates, and that's why we made the reductions and the adjustments that were referred to earlier. We made adjustments to curb that spending by about $10 million and began the other efforts to start changing our budget practices and working to curb our spending over time.
But you're saying it had nothing to do with this journal entry?
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. And tomorrow night, if you're able to come to our board meeting, we have the full timeline, a copy of all the entries, the explanation of all the entries, and how all these pieces would fit together to explain that, just so that the board and everyone else can be clear that there is no improprieties here.
Can you make a copy available to us in advance?
Yes.
Could we get that today?
If it's available, I'm not sure if Rodney Jackson in his office were putting that information together when I left to come over here. But we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
And the salaries to Lou and Mary and Vince,
According to the salary schedule and are part of the budget package.
and you didn't take any steps so that the board would not know about those or approve
No,
those?
absolutely not. The board was fully aware of the cabinet structure that I was creating. I was creating an executive cabinet structure, restructuring our office, and we discussed where the funds came from for those positions, approved those positions. The salary schedule reflects those positions, and that we followed those things as part of the budget package.
What about the tax increase? I could see parents being upset with that, especially with all this going on. Is it still?
The tax increase. This coming year?
Yes.
Well, we don't have any of the tax information. We don't get that till about August. This budget is predicated on a 4% tax increase. That's a correct statement.
Revenue increase.
But yes, but we don't get the tax information until generally in August to present those tax rates to the board.
Can
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
At the school board meeting on May 19th, did you, how come you didn't say publicly at that time that you had been aware that this allegations had been made, but that you all had checked it out and there was nothing to it?
Because I wasn't aware these allegations had been made.
Seemed like there was a pretty heated exchange in the last board meeting about this.
Right, I mean, that's the May 19th meeting she's referring to. That's when I found out about the question about the journal entries, and we made copies of those those journal entries and have since provided those since the 19th to the board. But I was not aware of any of these allegations made by Ms. Mullins until I received this copy of this letter today.
Tell me if I have this wrong. So you learned about the deficit in the fall of 2012, but it became an issue here in the fall of 2013.
Well, in the fall of 2012, when we were in the middle of the 12-13, that's the 12-13 year, that is when we began tightening the budget and began the process to start changing our practices and procedures. And as we built the 13-14 budget, this current year budget, we built that plan in mind with the reduction that we're currently working on. Remember, we work on a fiscal year, so in July 1 to June 30th, so when we learn in 2012, that is the 2013 year.
Right. But people have still pushed for how this came about and why, so what's your answer to that?
Well, the only way I can try to explain it any differently is to say that, if you could go back and look at any other school district in the state, they've made multiple budget reductions over time. Fayette County was able to survive those because of the financial stability and strength of the district and because of the strong fund balance we had. What's happened is the financial situation, the economic situation that caught everyone else back during early in the recession has finally caught up to Fayette County. And we have now, where we are seeing our expenditure growth outpace our revenue growth. It's just like you would in business when, sales drop, but you still have the same cost structure that you have, and so costs are begin to outpace the revenues. And so we've just gotten to a point where we have a 5% gap between revenues and expenditures. But it's been slowly building over time.
In other words, you kind of inherited the problem?
Well, I wouldn't say I inherited the problem. It was a conscious decision from the board to spend into the fund balance to try to maintain, the same level of services that we have been providing for years. Again, that's a normal practice in it. That's why governments and school districts maintain fund balances so that they can make it through lean times.
If I misunderstood you, tell me, but did you just say that you did tell Tulane, you said something to the effect of, are you telling me the budget for the last 2 years has been inflated by $20 million with recurring expenses? And so you did say that in a conversation with her?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And then you later, just so I know, after that, you talked to Rodney and others and figured out that that was not the case?
Which Rodney, Jelaine, and Mary, all of us met later and discussed that situation and reviewed it and found that it was not true.
It was not true. And what specific things showed you that it wasn't true?
Well, the reason that Jelaine believed it was true was because of this entry, which again is misunderstood and mischaracterized in this report. It had nothing to do with the budget situation. And so that was what reason she thought the budget had been overstated. But when we realized, that the entry was completely something different, it was reclassification because of the accounting structure requirements, that's when we knew that it was really not true.
And it was reclassification of what?
Okay, we have several different accounts that make up our balance sheet, what business owners would call their capital or their equity section that we call fund balance. Okay, and those portions of the fund balance, they're set aside for specific purposes. Some of it is set aside to pay out for the sick day accrual that we pay out when people retire. Some of it's set aside for construction, for purchasing land, for retirements, for all different types of things. And we have to mirror, our structure on our books has to mirror what the audit says. So it was a reclassification, just recoding and reclassifying the monies that were already there. There was no bottom line impact to that entry.
Was Rodney late in
No.
putting in so he wasn't late?
No.
And the date of the entry was not an issue?
It cannot be made until the audit is complete, which is in November. And so he made the entry in December, I believe. And so, no, he was right on time with the entry.
right on top, even though, so her allegations that the budget had gone to KDE back in June, and this whole scenario is not accurate? What Rodney
Those
did
are
was
two
correct?
different, well, the budget had been sent, that's correct, had been sent to KDE back at the end of May, 1st of June, you know, as it is now and would normally be. But that didn't have anything to do with this reclassification entry. Two separate issues.
She's
entirely.
mixing up two sets of things, and the June 25th date, or the July 25th date, that deadline was met with a different journal entry.
That's will all be explained again thoroughly tomorrow night.
When was the meeting where you learned with Julaine that this was not the reason for the deficit?
It was in January of 2013.
So how could she come away still now so confused a year?
I don't know.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, why would she make these allegations? How could she misunderstand?
I don't know that. You would have to ask her that. I mean, we have continued to have meetings and, you know, work as a group with the financial accounting, budget and staffing area, which she's the director of, and our chief operating officer and I, and, you know, and made adjustments to our budget according to the plan that we're developing now for the budget reduction. But as far as we were concerned, any questions about these particular journal entries had been discussed and explained, you know, back in January.
So, just point by point, the line where she says subsequently, the journal, as the Director of Finance, Rodney Jackson, failed to make a journal entry as discussed in the tentative budget discussions. Subsequently, the journal entry was not made until December 6, 2011, 6 months after it should have been. You're saying that's inaccurate?
That's inaccurate.
Okay, but because he did make it in 2011, but it was,
After the audit was completed.
but
You
he
can't-
did that because there was an audit going on and he had to wait till it was completed.
Yeah, because he can't make our financial statements and the audit agree if he doesn't have the audit complete to do so.
Okay. And then it said by then, the annual financial report had been sent to KDE, which was expected to have those funds committed or reserved per our budget discussions in May. And you're saying that did happen, but that wasn't a problem.
That,
Correct.
the entry related to the annual financial report did happen, but this reclassification, because of the audit, was a separate issue.
Okay. And so was there any problem with anything
No.
that Rodney Jackson did?
No,
It was all proper. It wasn't an irregularity or any kind of issue?
there are no irregularities in any of these counting transactions.
Okay. So she said that the journal entry was irregular because of the date of the entry. And you're saying that's inaccurate?
That is inaccurate.
So there was no problems whatsoever?
Correct.
Okay. And then, then the fact that Rodney used the words correct unreserved account when his department made the journal entry is not a problem?
He's making a reclassification to correct it according to what the audit says as compared to what.
That we turn into the Kentucky Department of Education, it requires just the mortgage to be in there. So we have to change what we call things, but the bottom line,
Doesn't
total
change.
dollar stays the same.
Do you think the budget's confusing? Because it's seeming like it is, and is it as transparent as you projected it to be?
Well, the process is what we want to be transparent. The budget itself is extremely complicated. The budget, accounting codes, the classification within those codes, the statements that are printed out because of it are extremely confusing if you're not used to the financial accounting structure. But this is a financial accounting structure that all school districts in the state use. It's defined by the state of Kentucky through its Department of Education. It's not a Fayette County thing. So, yeah, the statements are very hard to follow. If you, we all use the same accounting system called Munis, and they have standard reports, and they're very, very hard to follow. So, when we talk about transparency, it's in the process and being open to conversations like this to make sure that everyone does understand things.
How confident are you you've not committed mismanagement, fraud, waste, and abuse of authority?
100%. That'd be more if you could be more than 100%. I mean, there has been no mismanagement at all.
And,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and there was no problems at all with any scheduling decisions that you made? No, I'm
Scheduling?
sorry, pardon me, any salary decisions you made? There was no effort to keep that from the board?
No, the board approves the salary schedule every year, okay? They normally do it at the exact same time the budget is done, usually in May, as they did this past year, and as we have proposed for them to do tomorrow evening in the regular meeting. So, I mean, they approve the budget, which defines what goes into the salary schedule, and then we ask them to approve the salary schedule, and these positions are in the salary schedule. The hay grades that you mentioned earlier in the salary schedule, the structure of the positions is in there, and, you know, the board has approved those each time.
And did the budget transfers that you made to, for the Navigo contract, did those violate the board policy requiring approval for such expenditures?
I didn't make any budget transfers with Navigo. Okay, that's what I'm saying to you is that characterization is inaccurate in there. There were no transfers made. Those were budget line items in my budget. They were paid out of a different code within my same budget line. So there were no budget transfers made.
And you guys have to understand, budget transfer is a very specific accounting term, and, you know, Tom is an accountant. So when you think of a transfer, like, if you think of your household budget and you've set aside that you're gonna put $20 a month toward a vacation fund, and then you decide, no, you don't wanna go on a vacation this year, instead, you're gonna start putting that $20 aside to pay for a new car. When we talk about a transfer, that's something that it's a big amount of money, you take it to the board, they have to approve, because we're taking it from
We're
one.
changing the structure of the budget.
Right. What Tom's talking about is, he had a line item in his budget for supplies, and instead he was buying paper or printing. And so it's just a matter of, it's still within his budget, so it's not a transfer. A transfer would be if Tom took something out of his budget and gave it to a school, right,
So-
Tom?
Or moved it to a different department within central office.
So what exactly, in lay terms, what exactly did you do with the $275,000 Navigo?
I didn't do anything with them. That's why I don't understand that accusation there. We just simply, we have two $75,000 invoices, and we submit them for payment as we normally would through our normal procurement process and payment process. You know, so the comment about budget transfers is irrelevant, because we weren't moving anything. We were just simply making a payment that was required to make.
And what about the documentation that Julaine provided
What documentation?
to the board?
I'm not sure which documentation. I read the letter, so I'm not sure what documentation you're referring to.
I think she attached some documentation.
I know she attached some journal entries, copies of the journal entries. Which again, we're gonna go through all of those journal entries tomorrow night in detail with the board, so they can see the whole timeline and understand the flow, and then see how that has nothing to do with the budget process.
And I just wanted to make sure I was clear again. You had just mentioned that you all did have a meeting where Julianne had told you she had some concerns about this entry, and you had told her, you had asked her, you know, are you saying we have this problem? She said yes. When there was this discussion at the board meeting the other day, when Amanda Ferguson brought this up to Mary Wright and to Rodney, did this not strike you as maybe what they were talking about was this journal entry that Julianne had an issue with, or?
When she asked about the journal entry, she asked, was there a journal entry made? Was there any, journal entry made that the board wasn't aware of, that, was there any financial improprieties? And I answered no, and they each answered no. But again, it has nothing to do with the budget. And so when we're working on the budget with the board, they're two completely different issues. I mean, one is related to, you know, closing out and preparing a set of financial statements and reconciling to an audit, and the budget process is completely, distinctly different from that.
Now, who does audit,
We have external auditors that do our audit.
and who is that?
I'm not sure of the company's name, I can get that for you. But they're an independent, you know, CPA firm that does our audit. We bid financial audits, and we have an audit firm that I'll have to, is it Strothman and Company?
I have no idea.
I'll have to look it up.
So-
I have it on my phone, but I don't think you want me to stop right now and look it
No,
up on
and
my
you
phone.
said that Adam Evelyn's office also audited the
Yes.
school district last year?
That was the year before last, I believe.
Year before last, in 2012, and found no
No, you're
improprieties.
correct.
So when Amanda hinted at this, the last school board meeting, did you guys not think to start investigating then?
We did.
So you did start investigating then?
We went back and investigated, pulled these entries, and have sent these entries to the board. We've already provided this information to the board.
So then why is this a surprise?
The letter is a surprise because of the accusations within the letter.
It sounds to me like your director of finance and your budget director, the two people that seemingly are in charge of the money for the Fayette County schools, have some kind of personality conflict. And it sounds like that office is in terrible disarray. So who is really safeguarding our money then, if these two can't get along?
Well, we're in the process of redefining our budgeting processes and our financial reporting and restructuring. That's part of the long-term strategic financial planning that we're working on to improve exactly what you described.
So are you eliminating her position and maybe she saw this coming and
No.
No?
Is both Julian and Rodney still in their same positions?
Yes.
As of today?
As of today, yes.
Is there any thought that they won't be, or?
The only thought would be is how we could restructure to make this more efficient and effective. Because obviously we need to improve communication between the two departments.
Yeah, this is a train wreck. If this were a private business, it'd be in bankruptcy.
So Rodney, tell me how, who reports to who between Rodney, Jelaine, and Mary?
Rodney and Jelaine both report to Mary, and Mary reports to me.
Okay, and Rodney is in charge of
Financial accounting,
financial accounting, and Jelaine is in charge of?
budget and staffing.
Okay, so what are the two differences between those? Do they work together, or are they in the same?
They work across the hall from each other. Their offices, the two staffs are right directly across the hall from each other. Obviously, financial accounting is things like, you know, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, you know, managing the grants that we get, financial grants we get, that's on the financial accounting side. The budget and staffing side is developing and reporting on the budget and correcting and developing the staffing allocations that go to the school, because obviously that's where we spend the majority of our money, as we've talked about, is on our staffing. And yes, the two departments communicate on a regular basis, but obviously we have room for improvement.
I guess.
The firm is Strothman?
Yeah, Strothman.
Strothman. They're out of Louisville.
And are you, in terms of, have you talked to the OEA or to
Yes.
Adam Evelyn's office today?
I have left a message for Adam, or Mr. Eaglin. I called him and asked him if they would be willing to come in and do a full review of this, because I want the public to be sure and be clear, you know, about the situation. So, but I did talk to OEA. They're going through a little bit of a change right now because Marcia Seiler, who was the head of OEA, is the interim director of the Legislative Research Commission. And so Karen Tremmel, who's now been appointed as the interim director of the OEA, and I spoke, and she's going to work and talk with the auditor's office and figure out how both offices will respond.
But you've asked for a
Yes.
full review from both of them?
Absolutely. I want everyone, you know, I don't, you know, we've reviewed it and we feel confident in what I've said, but I feel like that the public, you know, deserves to have that done from, you know, those who manage those type of issues and concerns.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, please come to the board meeting if you can tomorrow and see the,
For a fascinating eye glazing over financial report.
yeah, about